Yo, what is up? So, welcome to the training. So, in this training, we're going to go through a overview of how to prevent every objection on fitness sales calls. So, we'll just pull this up. We'll dive right in. So, what we cover in this training? So, we're going to go through the four-step process that you need to follow to pre-handle objections. So, what is pre handling objections in the first place? Just so we're all on the same page. Pre handling objections is essentially figuring out what sort of objection you're going to get after you ask for the sale, picking it up during the call, and then doing what we can to prevent it from coming up so that we don't get the objection. So, we have nice, quick, objectionless closes. So what we're going to do then, we're going to go through the four-step process, and then we are going to dive into some objection-specific deep dives. So how to identify the objection, where and when to challenge the objection, what to say to help the prospect overcome the objection, and then final step in that is how to make sure the objection doesn't come back. Okay, so when you pre-handle it, it's finished. You don't end up getting it at the end of the call. And if you do, it's very simple to handle. So why listen to me in the first place? Some of you guys mightn't necessarily know who I am. So I've been a top fitness sales rep on multiple 7 and 8 figure fitness offers. So businesses doing either millions per year or tens of millions per year. I've taken over 4,000 fitness sales calls. I've generated multiple millions personally. So I've probably sold 2,000 plus people into high ticket fitness sales programs. And I've often closed at 2 times or 3 times the team average. I've even beaten the face of the brand on some offers. So I've closed at 70% plus for months at a time when the team average was 25%. We all had the same leads. What I do is just better. So I've also gone on to manage multiple fitness sales teams. With the last team, I managed tripling their cash collected from 100K per month to 300K per month in under 6 months. And that's in pounds. So here's a bit of a... can be a bit hard to see, but here's some proof for you guys. So we can see here 63%. We can look at the team average, 67%. Team average again, quite low. 60%, someone getting a bit closer at 40% there. There's a 100% month that I had once. And then also we can see this is when I joined this team and took over and started managing it, taught them my sales process, hired and trained the closers. And we can see after being pretty flatline, we just went straight up, exponential growth. So why listen to me? Continued. So how do I do this? Like, what have I done? What do I do differently? So I've created the CPC fitness sales system, which has gone on to generate over 20 million in fitness sales in the last 3 years. One of the key focuses that we do is really short calls, so 30-minute calls, and we aim for objectionless closes. So that's why this pre-handling of objections is so important. It works in every health and fitness niche. Sometimes people come to me and they think their niche is special. It's not. This works in literally anything that isn't ROI based. So where there's no kind of monetary reward. So personally then, since starting my coaching business, I've gone on to coach some of the biggest fitness businesses in the world. I've coached Warrior Babe, which is a 9-figure fitness business. I've coached in Committed Coaches and quite a few others. I've coached people from a lot of the major companies. So I've also helped my students to double, triple, or even quadruple their income within months of working to me. And again, here's some proof. So we have Ethan, who's a business owner, was literally just starting out, had a $7,200 day in one of his first weeks with us. Jordan with a 52% close for the month. Brody, 9 out of 11 closes in 6 days. So Brody went from having his closing percentage, I think, was around 30%. And obviously we've made massive improvements. Sam Board with an August hot streak, 17 calls showed up, 15 closed. Joseph doubled his closing rate. Matthew Boyd using some of our upsell tactics. So these are all fairly recent and they're all within short time frames of working with us. So we'll dive into the good stuff then. Enough about me. So an overview on how to pre-handle objections. So There's a couple of steps. This is the 4-step process I spoke about. We have identified the objection. So generally, a lot of objections, something that people don't realize, especially in fitness, they're going to be tied to self-esteem or responsibility. And we'll dive into that a little bit more and I'll explain what I mean by that. But most objections, it's either going to be real or it's going to be rooted within fear or value. And that's all you really need to know, right? When it comes to, and then it's the different angles that we can attack it at. Okay, so step 2, once we have identified the objection, we want to show empathy towards the prospect and normalize their objection. So we never want to be judgmental. We never want to blame the prospect. We want to make them feel, that they're in a safe space. And we often want to push away the sale, which is something I don't have there, but something I can explain a little bit later. Number 3, we want to challenge the prospect to overcome their objection. So we need to seek a justification as to why their behavior is going to change. If someone has told you, like point blank told you that they've had this behavior for 6 years and it's kept them stuck, you can't just presume that suddenly because they're talking to you, the behavior is going to change. We need to actually get a justification. We need to get them to justify to themselves why suddenly they're going to change their behavior. And then we want to chip away at the objection throughout the call, which is something I'm going to dive into. So I just wanted to touch on this, and this is something that we talk about a lot more within the inner circle, but understanding self-esteem and responsibility. So I'm just going to explain this briefly. So pretty much every prospect that you speak to, they're going to fall somewhere on this matrix. Okay, so high self-esteem, low self-esteem, low responsibility, high responsibility. And this is where people go wrong. Okay, like a lot of the main kind of sales mentorships that you speak to, they just don't factor in self-esteem whatsoever. They think that everything can be solved with a responsibility frame, and it just won't work. And I'm going to give you some examples so that you'll be able to see this within your own calls. If you're taking calls, you'll understand why I'm right. So these are kind of the things that you would have to look out for, the type of objection you would get. So if someone's low responsibility, they're going to be blaming external things, right? They're going to feel like it doesn't matter what you do or how you help them. They can't achieve the goal because the problem is external to them. So there's no reason they would buy because they're not the problem. Something else is the problem. And you can't fix that something else. So therefore, there's no reason to buy, right? Low self-esteem is going to be, it doesn't matter what you do. Your program could be absolutely perfect. I just don't believe in myself. Okay? High responsibility, so too high responsibility, is going to be, it doesn't matter what you do, only one person can actually fix this, and that's me. And I just need to decide whether or not I'm going to fix it, and then I need to take action. Okay, so I don't need you. And then high self-esteem is, I know exactly what I'm doing. I just need to, I can do this by myself. So you can see these often fall into sort of underlying DIY type objections, while these will fall into fear objections. So how do we actually move people into that buying pocket in the middle? So low responsibility, we're going to want to reframe problems to help them understand that they're actually in control. I'm going to give you a really quick example. If someone says, if I ask someone, okay, why do you feel you've struggled with your weight over the last 5 years? And they say, oh, my job is really stressful. That's a low responsibility answer. That's like my job. I cannot get them to change their job. I can't fix that. But what I want to do is reframe it into something that is within their control. Okay, no, I can definitely understand why you've struggled. Just so I'm clear, because stress doesn't directly cause you to gain weight. So just so I understand the situation, when you're stressed, what exactly happens? Oh, well, I make shit food choices, or I overeat. Okay. Now it's something within their control, right? So I can start to shift the focus back to them taking responsibility. So that's just one really quick example. Low self-esteem is going to be when there's just like broken beliefs. They don't believe that they can actually achieve the goal. And we're going to need to push through that. And an example would be if someone says, I've tried everything, nothing works, I just can't lose the weight, right? It doesn't matter what you say to that person, unless you kind of get them to overcome that. They're not going to buy because they don't believe they can be successful. Okay, so we need to actually change that belief. High responsibility. When we're challenging people, we might need to tie in the need for help. So, and the type of language that will kind of lead you to think that someone's high responsibility is if they're blaming themselves a lot. And you can often kind of link it to high self-esteem. They're blaming themselves a lot and they're saying, I know what to do, I just need to do it. Like that's often where that can sort of present itself and how you'll identify it. And then high self-esteem, again, is going to be people, they tell you all about how amazing what they do is, like everything they do, how amazing it is. They'll often tell you in detail about how they do everything right. And very simple fix is we just need to tie them to results, reality check them. Don't let them just talk shit about how amazing they are when they're clearly not getting the result, right? So we're going to do a bit of an objection deep dive now. We're going to go through fear. We'll even touch on, skepticism, time, busy, commitment. We're going to go through value. We're going to go through partner, and we're going to go through think about it. Now, I do want to say there's only so much I can cover in one training. These are things that we break down in a lot of detail inside of our course and inside of our community. If you're interested in joining and jumping in, we do have a free community. The link is probably going to be somewhere around, unless you're seeing this inside of the community, and then awesome. But let's dive in. So easiest way to explain this is by looking through our script. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to identify when some of these language patterns start to come up and where you're going to actually tackle them. Okay, so when we're talking about fear, we're often looking for fear of failure. That's generally what we're looking for. That's where the majority of fear is going to come from. I know people like to talk about fear of future, fear of past, and fear of blah, 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 blah. Fear of failure. That's the fear, right? So they don't think it's going to work for whatever reason. So when we're talking to someone, some of the red flags that we want to look out for is any sort of like limiting language. In those early stages of the call, you'll often hear it. People will say, oh, I'm skeptical. Oh, I've tried so many things. Nothing works. Oh, everything is the same on the internet. Da, 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 right? You'll also hear it when you ask them about their goal. Do they limit themselves? Do they say, oh, well, I'd like to get to 160 pounds, but realistically, I'd be happy if I got to 190. They're limiting their goal. Okay, and that tells you that they don't fully believe in their ability to achieve the goal. So you're not going to jump on it or do anything major when these things come up, but it is going to start to, your spidey senses are going to start tingling, right? You're going to be thinking, okay, I potentially have a fear objection here. As we go through, some other telltale signs that we might get is when we say, why do you feel you've struggled with your weight during that time? This comes back to that matrix, okay? Are they taking responsibility? Are they blaming things that are completely outside of their control? Are they saying, I don't know, I do everything right, I can't lose weight, which is telling you maybe they don't believe in their ability to achieve the goal. So we need to be perceptive and think not just about what the person is saying, but we need to think about what does that actually mean for the other person? Like, what are they, like, what's the meaning behind the words? How does that connect with them? As we go through, this is where the gold in solving fear objections comes from in fitness. And that's the problem phase. So we want to explore why they have failed before. Okay. I know some people, they only focus on what you're currently doing, but I can tell you right now with fitness, you need to look at what they've done in the past, why they have failed. Okay. If you don't look at what they've done in the past and why they've failed, then you're going to miss the opportunity to find the fear because it's going to be there. Okay. So again, what are we looking out for in terms of fear objections? We're looking out for people that are adamant that they've tried and failed. They say things like, oh, I've given up. I'm at my wit's end. I've tried so many things. Nothing works. I can't lose the weight. I can never keep the weight off. I did everything right and nothing happened. Right? They're just blaming things. And they're ultimately telling you that it's outside of their control. Do you know that it doesn't matter what they do, they're perfect. They just cannot achieve their goal. Okay? And I want you to always think of this, right? When two people communicate, the one who is the most certain will influence the other one. And we need to have absolute conviction in the other person and their ability to achieve the goal. We need to be unshakable in the fact that they can actually achieve the goal, right? So when someone is telling you these things, we need to very gently be able to push them back towards accepting that they can achieve it and that there has to be a problem. So what could that look like? Let's say we're asking our questions and someone starts to blame or they start to say, oh, nothing works. I did everything right, but I can't lose weight. Okay. As we said, we've identified the objection. We've identified a broken belief. We want to show empathy and normalize it. Look, like that sounds pretty frustrating if you feel like you were doing everything right, but you couldn't lose the weight. And it makes sense that you would feel like that. A lot of my clients have felt like that before. We've empathy, normalize. But I guess the thing is, challenge. I guess the thing is, everyone can lose weight. Okay, so it's not your fault if you don't know. Okay, but it always comes down to something we're doing or not doing. So I guess if you were to think about it a little bit, is there anything you feel maybe you were doing or not doing that held you back from losing the weight? Okay, so you can see we're showing empathy, we're normalizing it, but we're being firm on the fact that this broken belief is not correct. And we need to guide them towards accepting that there is a problem. Okay? At this point, they'll either blame something or they will say they don't know. If they blame something, you go off that. Is it going to be like emotional eating or self-sabotage or anything like that we can then use and turn into a sale? Or they say, I don't know. In which case you say, yeah, look, I mean, that's perfectly fine. That, like, as I said, that's not your fault. You don't know. Like, if you did know, we probably wouldn't be here talking. Okay. So I guess having someone that can show you how to lose the weight and can actually show you where you're going wrong, that would be important for you. Yes. Gotcha. That makes sense. Okay. So what have we done? We've taken this broken belief. Nothing works. We've been firm. We've been certain. We've had conviction around the fact that, like, hey, everyone can lose weight. So there has to be a problem. We haven't blamed them. We haven't made them feel bad, but we have gently and firmly pushed towards the facts that there has to be a problem. We're not trying to make them feel shit that they don't know the answer. We're not blaming them, but we're not accepting that there isn't a problem. And you need to stick to your guns on this. From there, once they accept there is a problem, I don't know what the problem is, that's fine. Not your fault. Okay, that's why people like us exist. Right? And now we're going towards solution. But I guess having someone that can show you how to lose the weight, that would be important for you. Yes. And now we've got agreement on a solution. So we've brought someone from broken belief to actually being problem aware. I just don't know what the problem is. To solution aware, having someone that could show you what the problem is. That would help. Yes. Okay. And now we're on our way to taking this fear objection and this broken belief and actually finding a way to solve it and make a sale. Hope this makes sense. I'm freestyling, by the way. So that's essentially the crux of it, right? Now, how do we stop that from coming up? And this is what I call chipping away at an objection. Once we identify an objection, we want to keep hammering it, like keep chipping away at it very subtly. So if we move down through the script, let's find some examples of where we would chip away. So chipping away is essentially shaping the rest of your call to tackle an objection. So an example would be the why now question. Let's say we identify that, like, hey, they just don't believe in themselves, and they've never gotten help because they've just been so skeptical over it, right? We could bring it up again. So, like, look, I know obviously you've struggled with kind of believing in yourself, and believing that you can actually achieve your goal, and that's super normal, right? Especially when you've tried and failed before. It's going to be really normal to feel like that. Okay. But I guess I have to ask, like, are you sure that now is the time to do something about this? Like, have you definitely made that decision for yourself? Because I guess, like, if you haven't made that decision to be brave and to take that step forward again, if you haven't made that decision, then nobody can help. So, like, is now definitely the time to do something? Yes. Okay, but, like, why now? Why not just keep pushing this down the road like a lot of women do who never lose the weight? So we're going to, like, use the objection against them a little bit more, right? As we move forward, and let's say we're into consequence, we want to use the objection again. I guess, like, my concern is when I speak to someone like you who doesn't necessarily believe in themselves, they often hold themselves back. They think that they can't achieve their goal, so they just never get the help. So I guess, like, if this was to keep going and you never got the help you need, and the weight was to keep creeping up, and the confidence was to get lower and lower, and the clothes sizes were to get bigger and bigger, like, I guess, like, what would that be like for you? So again, we're adding context to our questions to keep overcoming the same objection, because we know that that's the objection, right? As we move down in our pitch, we're going to make sure we solve that objection, that we make the pitch really about the objection. And then again, as we get through the pitch, we're checking for fear post-pitch. We might need to bring it up again and just solve it. Like, are you sure that you feel ready to take that step? Because it's okay if you don't. Like, as I said, my concern is just that your fears hold you back. Like, are you sure that you're ready to actually take that step towards your goals and to try one last time? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to tackle it again so that at the end of the call, I don't actually get the objection, right? I just ask them for the sale and they say, yeah, let's do it. I need to do it. Okay, so some other little examples of this. Like, let's say they say, oh, I'm skeptical, right? And we're working down through here. We might use our why now question to tackle the skepticism. So I might say, I'll bring it up here and set up some context for my why now question. So I could say, previously you mentioned that you were skeptical. Like, do you mind telling me a little bit about that? Like, what makes you so skeptical? And yeah, look, it's totally normal that you feel like that, especially when you've tried and failed before. And I guess you're always going to feel a little bit skeptical until you start to actually get results, right? But I guess my concern is, what happens if you're always too skeptical, so then you never actually get the help you need? Okay, so, I mean, if you were to find the right thing, do you feel like you're ready to kind of overcome that skepticism and actually get the help you need? You feel like you're ready to take that step? Yes. Okay, but, like, why now? Why not just keep, pushing this down the road, letting the skepticism hold you back, like a lot of women do who never lose the weight, right? And now we're overcoming that objection. As we move down through the script and we do our costs of inaction, we can use it again, right? So I guess my concern is what happens if you're always too skeptical? I know you mentioned that you feel you're ready to take that step, but a lot of people struggle with it, especially when they have doubts, they have fears around their ability to achieve their goals. So I guess my concern is if this keeps going and the weight keeps creeping up and blah, 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 like what would that be like for you? So I'm going to make it about that, okay? Again, in my pitch, I'm going to talk about it. And in my checking for fear afterwards, I'm going to talk about it so that at the end of the call, I get a definite yes. Okay, so we're identifying the objection, we're challenging them with that kind of why now, those are you ready, that's I'm being skeptical of them. Like, are you sure that now is the time to do something? Are you ready to actually do something about this? And then we're getting that justification, and then we're going to keep chipping away at it if we need to. Okay, and these are only some examples of how you can do this. There's lots of other ways to do this, and there's lots of moments and little commitment questions and things we can do, but I'm just trying my best to jam this in off the top of my head and give you guys as much value as possible. So if we're to look at the next objection, we have time, busy, commitment. And again, where does this come up? This is like a form of fear, right? And this will often come up in around here. Like, why do you feel you've struggled with your weight during that time? And it will often come up as well as we go down through this. They'll just start blaming, oh, I'm very busy. Time is an issue. Now, the mistake that people make is they basically try to use responsibility frames and try to challenge the person super directly without showing any empathy. And what ends up happening is like the person then has to try to decide whether or not they have enough time. And sometimes they won't. But like coaching programs, if you've ever been part of a coaching program, the way that they do it, especially for weight loss and these types of things, is they'll work around someone's schedule. So we don't want to create any barriers we don't need to. So we challenge people to take the first step, and then we'll figure it out and we'll help them. So give you some examples, right? So if I ask someone, why do you feel you've struggled with your weight during that time? And they're just like, oh, I'm super busy. And it's like, okay, no, I totally get it. I guess, like, just so I'm clear, like, when you're busy, what exactly happens that causes you to gain weight? Oh, well, I make shit food choices and stuff like that. Right. Okay. So having someone that could show you, how to make good food choices, even when you're on the run, even when things get a bit crazy, that's kind of what you're hoping for. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Like, say we keep moving down through this. So I've reframed it a little bit. We keep moving down through this. They keep blaming, oh, busy, don't have time, that's held me back. Maybe we get down to the challenge phase and I'm like, just so I'm clear, how long has it been since you last actively tried to lose weight? Oh, it's been 2 years. Well, what's been holding you back from trying before this? Oh, I've just been too busy. Okay. The basic way to try to challenge that would just be like, okay, but I guess why now though? And we're asking for a justification as to why now they're less busy. The ninja, top level way of doing this is we want to minimize that objection while also challenging them to make a commitment. And then we're going to finish it off with the why now, and then we're going to chip away at it. So I'm going to explain that. That sounds like a lot. But minimize that objection. So we're going to say, okay, now don't get me wrong. Having the right help is important because they can show you how to lose the weight no matter how busy you are. Okay, I've removed your busy objection. Okay, so they can show you how to lose the weight no matter how busy you are. But I guess I have to ask, are you sure that now is the time to actually do something about this? Have you definitely made that decision for yourself? Because if you haven't made that decision, then nobody can help. Okay, so is now definitely the time? Yes. Okay, but why now? Why not just keep pushing this down the road like most women do who never lose the weight? And now we got the justification. So we minimize the time objection. We reframe it whenever we can. We minimize it. We're not asking them to make it a 25th hour in the day because you will lose that fight, right? We minimize it. We show them, don't get me wrong, having the right help is important because they can show you how to lose the weight no matter how busy you are. So this is inside your control. So forget about that excuse. And then we want to be skeptical of them. Are you sure that now is the time to do something about this? Have you definitely made that decision for yourself? Because if you haven't made that decision, then nobody can help. We vilify not making that decision. Nobody can help you. You're fucked, right? So I guess are you sure that now is the time? Yes. And then we get the justification. It's like a 1-2 punch. We get a yes, and then we hit them with the why now afterwards. So they have to justify their position. As we move through, again, there's lots of little nuance and details that we could do here. But another example of chipping away, cost of inaction. I guess my concern is what happens if you never get the right help, you never understand how to actually lose the weight, regardless of how busy you are, or you just keep telling yourself you're too busy to even start, and this gets worse and worse and worse, and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. What would that be like for you? So again, we're using it against them. When we go into the pitch, we're going to, again, make sure we solve that problem, solve that objection, tie it off. And then when we're at the end, if we feel like we need to bring it back up and get another challenge around that, we will. Cool. So we're speed running objections here. We got value. Okay, value. Why do people get value objections? Okay, so there's kind of two ways to pre-handle value, and it's going to come down to the emotional phase. Well, let me fix that. Value and fear are very similar. They're like a spectrum, right? So if someone doesn't think that something will work, it has no inherent value. So they are connected. So and that's something I'll do another video about. But value and fear are very much one and the same, because something becomes more valuable the easier you think it will be. The less fear you have around it, the more value it has, if that makes sense. So fear is going to be more based around will it work? Value, one side of the same coin, is going to be what we're going to talk about is more of the case of would it be worth it? Do I want to make a change? And where this is going to come often is going to be the emotional phase. So pre-handling value objections is really just having an unbelievable emotional phase. It should feel like a roller coaster, and it should be very, very, very specific to their situation. You should get them to imagine the peak and the low in as much depth as possible, but it should be really quick. So my current pain, my future state, and my cost of inaction take about 5 minutes max, but we really stretch that gap as much as possible. And the reason this is important is that emotional value can be directly translated into monetary value. Someone needs to have a $5,000 problem in their head if they're going to buy your $5,000 solution. Okay? Now, there's another side to this, and this is something for another video. Okay? But there's another side to this, and that's intent. So not everyone is going to have massive emotional pain. And sometimes you're going to need to switch gears, and you're going to need to challenge people more on their intent. So I'm going to give you a quick example. One of my clients they help people get back running pain-free. So there isn't always massive emotion around it. Okay, but the type of person often that wants to run Ironmen, yeah, who want to run Ironmen are going to be very driven mentally, right? So they have massive intent towards achieving. So when we go looking for emotional pain, if that's all we're focused on, sometimes we can come up short and it doesn't feel like there's a lot of value. But we say, why do you run? What's your main goal out of running? And they're just like, oh, I just want to be healthier. And you can tell you're not going to get it anywhere with this. we want to shift to intent. So intent is just like the want behind it. I guess like there's lots of other ways to get healthy, and a lot of them are a lot less time consuming and definitely a lot easier to do. So I guess like what about running specifically makes that like your main goal? Like what's behind that? And we're just going to shift subtly towards like your want, your intent to do it. Okay, I'm going to dive into that in another video, but that's just like a bit of, if you think, people often call these like A-type personalities, but really it's just if people have more resources and they're more driven and they're more chasing pleasure as opposed to running away from pain, you really want to focus on that intent and you want to challenge them with your skepticism and push back. Like say you have a guy that wants to be a bodybuilder, and he's already in good shape and he wants to be absolutely ripped. And this kind of sometimes referred to as identity selling, right? He wants to be absolutely shredded. And I mean, man, like a lot of people will be happy with your physique. I guess I'm curious, like, what's the big driver behind wanting to be even leaner and even bigger? Why wouldn't you just stay the same? That skepticism causes people to start justifying intent. Because we mightn't find emotion. Like we could ask him about how he feels about the way he looks, and he'd be like, fine. Do you know? And it's a bit of a dead end. So value is often going to come from, one, solving their problem. They need to feel like what we do works and that if there's any fear that it's gone. But two, either finding massive emotional pain, a massive emotional value, or finding massive intent. You can double down on those people with intent as well by kind of giving them an identity. So yeah, I guess that makes sense. You seem like the type of person that once you put your mind on something, you'll do whatever it takes, get whatever help you need to get so that you can make it possible. Yeah, awesome, right? So again, we're tying in getting help into that identity that we're giving someone, right? Partner. And again, I am literally freestyling and we're speed running. So I'm probably creating more questions in your mind than I'm answering right now, but hopefully you'll find it valuable. If you need help after watching this or you have questions, feel free to shoot them over. Partner objections. I don't do any bullshit like, oh, does your partner know you're on the call? Do they support you? Because it just doesn't work. I know it doesn't work because I used to do it. I also know it doesn't work because I track the stats across sales teams I managed. And I did nothing like that. And I had 3% partner objections, while other people on my team that did that had 17% partner objections. 17% of their fails were partner objections is what I mean by that. So how was I able to get less partner objections, even though I didn't actually do anything about partner directly, except in some situations? And I'm going to walk you through that. So in terms of stopping the partner objection, you got to think there's only two types of partner objection. There's going to be a real partner objection. And a real partner objection is someone that genuinely 110% needs to speak to their partner. And you cannot prevent that. You can try to deal with it and like go for deposits, coach the person on how to speak to their partner, get them to convince their partner. And the thing is, if they really, really, really want to do it and they actually have to speak to their partner, they're going to fight that fight for you, right? Fake partner objections is the other side. And where do fake partner objections come from? They come from the fear, they come from value, they come from that matrix that I discussed. So how do you prevent them? You just do a really good fucking job on the call. Like, it's so simple. If someone wants to do your service, they're not going to give you fake objections. Like, it's fear and value is the majority of objections. Everything else after that it's either real or it's not, and it's because you missed out on fear or value. Okay, but there is some situations where we can chip away and you can see that, okay, someone has this like pattern or this broken belief, this thing that they do, and it's usually around responsibility, that's causing them to give you a partner objection. So there is some cases, and this will often come up. Like mums are really bad for this, right? And you will get other people that do this, but mums generally do this more than anyone, where they have mum guilt. right? So the type of language that will come up is they'll often say things like, you know, they'll talk about putting other people first, or, you know, their excuse is going to be around taking care of their family, right? So you know that when you start to hear that language, you know that, like, hey, this person doesn't necessarily prioritize themselves, and that's potentially part of the problem. So where we would try to tackle this and bring this up is, we can work down through it, obviously, but when we come down to kind of this challenge phase again, we could bring up like, hey, so I know earlier you'd mentioned kind of putting, like, struggling to prioritize your own needs or putting other people before you. Like, do you mind telling me a little bit more about that? Da 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 da. How long has that been going on for? Da 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 da. If you want, you can throw in some bonus questions. Like, and again, we're going to normalize and show empathy. It's like pretty much every mom I speak to, like, goes through the same situation, right? It's really, really hard to put yourself first when you have a family to take care of. Okay. But I guess, like, what have you missed out on in your life because you've been putting other people's needs above yours? That's a bonus question. You don't necessarily need to ask it. But then we can go into seeking the challenge, seeking the justification. Okay. So, you know, don't get me wrong. And again, we're going to minimize the objection. Don't get me wrong. Like, having the right help's important, right? Because they can show you how to lose weight in a way that works around your family, you know, that keeps everyone happy, that makes sure you're not neglecting them, you know, that everyone is still thriving. But I guess I have to ask, because it's always difficult for mums to actually take that first step towards prioritizing themselves. So I guess I have to ask, like, are you sure that now is the time to do something about this? Like, have you definitely made that decision for yourself? Because if you haven't made that decision, then nobody can help. Okay, so is now definitely the time to start prioritizing your own needs? Yes. Okay, but I guess, like, why now though? Why not just keep putting everyone else's needs above yours, like a lot of women do who never lose the weight? See what we're doing? So now we've got the justification. Again, there's loads of little things we can do here, loads of finer details that help you to overcome these objections. But we can, so I'll go and give you some quick examples, some gold. So we can use these little, like, commitment style questions when they come up. And let's say someone starts to use, like, a lot of positive language. They're like, oh yeah, I just need to do something about it. I really want to make a change, blah, blah, blah. In these types of situations, and let's say this is the objection we're trying to overcome, we could be like, okay, so you've kind of decided enough is enough, time to really prioritize your own goals. Yes. And I guess the thing is, if you don't do it for yourself, who's going to do it for you? No one. Exactly. And if not now, when? Exactly. And you're just going to get these little tie downs and commitments that are helping you to overcome the objection, right? Then we can and that can happen throughout the call. We consequence again. You know what happens if you never actually prioritize your goals? You never commit to yourself. You keep putting everyone else's needs above yours. You know, and in 30 years' time, you're looking back on this situation and you never actually did anything for yourself. And over the years, XYZ got worse. Like, what would that actually be like for you? Awful, terrible, right? When we pitch, we make sure it's family friendly, make sure it fits around their goals, And then again, here we can bring it up, you know, I know you've made it quite clear you want to do something about this, but I just know how difficult it is for mums in your situation to really prioritize themselves and to take that first step. So I guess I have to ask, like, are you 100% sure that you want to do something about this? Yes. Okay. Right? As a quick example. And again, okay, last one. Think about it. And again, think about it. Why would you get to think about it? It's going to come back to fear or value. I probably didn't even need to have that one on the list. You also have money. It's going to come back to either fear, value, or money, right? So there's only two types of objections. There's real objections and fake objections. A fake objection is always going to be fear, value, or some broken belief, some pattern that they repeat, in which case I've given you guys loads of examples of how to challenge that. If it's a real objection, you can't stop it. But I have some good news for you. Real objections make up a tiny portion of the objections. Pretty much everything comes back to fear or value. If someone had absolute certainty in what you do would get them the result they want, they wouldn't have fear objections and they wouldn't have value objections. Okay? It's the lack of certainty and the lack of belief and the lack of want that cause the objection to come up in the first place. So I hope that was helpful. It was a bit of a speed run, a bit of an information dump. I tried to put as much value and as much examples into this 45 minutes as I could. As I said, if you're not in our community and you want to join the community, there's probably going to be a link around here somewhere. If you're in the community, well done, good on you, and you want to ask some questions, feel free to post them into the Q&A and I'll be sure to jump on and answer them for you and give you some finer details. Peace.